Brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of truth, lend me your ears not just to listen, but to awaken. For today we lift the veil on a conflict painted in politics, but rooted in prophecy, dressed in diplomacy, but soaked in blood. They say Israel is special, but I ask special in what? In the way it bombs Gaza and silences babies before they cry, in how it claims divine right while denying human rights, or in how it walks into international courts with blood on its hands and walks out with medals on its chest. You are told to look at Iran as a threat, but never told to look at who is pointing the finger. You are told to fear a nuclear Iran, yet forget who already owns the arsenal of annihilation. And so I ask you, my people, in this theater of lies, who is the true danger, who is truly exceptional? Speech is not for the faint-hearted. It is for the conscious, for those tired of selective justice, tired of global silence wrapped in cowardice. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear will not be repeated on your television. It will not be posted in your trending tweets, but it will ignite your mind and arm your soul with the weapon of truth. Brothers and sisters, before the bombs fell, before the sanctions were signed, and before the headlines were weaponized, there existed a myth older than empires, more dangerous than weapons of war. This myth was not written in ages of justice, but carved into the stones of arrogance. It is the myth of divine exceptionalism, the belief that one people, one nation, has been handpicked by the heavens to stand above others, not by merit, not by morality, but by mandate. It is this myth that breathes life into Israel's self-proclaimed superiority. It is not a superiority of ethics, nor innovation, nor humanity. It is a superiority claimed by invoking ancient texts while committing modern atrocities. They say, we are the chosen. Chosen by whom and for what? To be the guardians of peace or the architect. Permanent war, to be a light unto nations or a shadow over a people denied their land, their breath, their very identity. This is not a matter of faith. This is a matter of manipulation. Scriptures are twisted into slogans, prophecies are weaponized into policy, and a God of justice is invoked. To justify injustice, when a nation believes it is chosen, it begins to act as if it is untouchable. It builds walls not just of concrete, but of pride. It sees its suffering as sacred, while dismissing the suffering it inflicts on others as necessary collateral. And so Israel marches through history with a flag in one hand and a missile in the other, claiming both as symbols of divine authority. It builds settlements on stolen land and calls them fulfillment of prophecy. It bulldozes homes, uproots families, and brands it as security. It murders civilians and wraps its crimes in the cloth of self-defense, and the world, intoxicated by guilt or blind loyalty, dares not question the myth. For to question the myth is to be labeled an enemy, and to oppose the chosen is to be condemned as evil. But I stand here today to tell you that no people, no state, no government has a monopoly on divine favor. If a God exists, then surely that God does not condone the slaughter of children or the slow suffocation of a nation. Surely that God does not bless bombs that tear through hospitals or bullets that find the backs of journalists. Yet Israel continues, armored not just by tanks, but by the belief that history owes them exemption, that their past pain is a license to inflict pain, that their suffering grants them immunity from international law. This is the arrogance of exceptionalism. We must ask ourselves, what kind of world are we building when one nation can claim sacred victimhood while acting as a sanctified oppressor? What kind of justice allows one to wield the Bible in one hand and a sniper rifle in the other? The belief that Israel is special, untouchable, unquestionable, has created a distortion of reality where facts are bent, where truth is assassinated, and resistance is criminalized. They want you to forget about the blood in Gaza. They want you to unsee the tears of Palestine. They want you to erase the checkpoints, the apartheid walls, the hunger, the humiliation, all while repeating that eternal line, we are chosen. But chosen for what? chosen to be protected by Western empires, chosen to ignore UN resolutions, chosen to silence every voice that demands justice for the oppressed. This is not divine favor. This is colonialism wrapped in scripture. It is occupation baptized in arrogance. Do not misunderstand me. Every life is sacred. Every history carries wounds, but when pain becomes a weapon, and when the memory of genocide is used to justify ongoing crimes, we must speak. We must ask, is exceptionalism a shield for justice, or a sword for domination? This is why the conflict with Iran is not merely about uranium or missiles. It is about narrative. It is about control over the story of who is righteous and who is rogue. Israel believes that it can label others as threats while hiding behind the armor of divine favoritism. But truth, my people, does not bow to myths. Truth stands tall against the winds of propaganda. Truth demands that no nation, no matter how ancient its scripture, be allowed to brutalize another under the illusion of being special. We are living in a world where silence is a betrayal, where neutrality is complicity, and where the myth of exceptionalism must be shattered, not with hatred, not with vengeance, but with unrelenting truth. For in that truth we reclaim our power. In that truth we say, no more chosen tyrants, no more sacred occupations, no more divine silence. Brothers and sisters, there is a question that history refuses to answer with honesty. How does a nation so small, surrounded by so many, continue to act with such boldness, such impunity, such arrogance? The answer lies not in divine protection, nor in unmatched intelligence, but in a deal signed not in scripture, but in silence from empires who have turned a blind eye to bloodshed, in silence from institutions that claim to uphold peace, in silence bought with billions of dollars and paid in the lives of innocents. Israel is not special because of some heavenly seal. It is special because it has been chosen, not by God, but by global powers to be the spear of their interests in the Middle East. Let us speak plainly. Israel's sense of superiority is not self-made. It is manufactured in the factories of Washington, D.C., funded by tax dollars from the West, and maintained by a military, industrial complex that thrives on conflict, not peace. Each year, billions flow from the United States into the pockets of the Israeli regime, not as loans, not as aid for survival, but as fuel for expansion, as weapons of occupation, as shields against accountability. No nation on earth receives as much unquestioned support, as many vetoes at the United Nations, as much protection from global scrutiny, and with that protection Israel walks taller, talks louder, and strikes harder. Do not be misled. This is not about security. This is about strategic superiority. Israel is the outpost, the watchdog, the garrison of Western hegemony in the heart of a region rich in oil, culture, resistance, and revolution. The alliance is not built on shared values. It is built on shared interests. Interests that demand Iran remain isolated, that Palestine remain crushed, and that any voice of sovereignty in the region be silenced. Israel's exceptionalism is not born out of resilience. It is imported, sponsored, ensured by the empire's invisible hand, and so Israel speaks with the confidence of the powerful, not because it has earned moral authority, but because it knows the world's most powerful nations will cushion every crime. It launches airstrikes in Syria and the world shrugs, assassinates scientists in Iran and Western media calls it defense. It builds illegal settlements and gets rewarded with more arms, more deals, more applause. This is not justice. This is strategic partnership wrapped in hypocrisy. A partnership where the West provides the bullets and Israel pulls the trigger, and the victims are always those who dare to resist. Look at how Iran is treated. Sanctions choke its people. Threats fly across the airwaves. Its right to defend itself, to grow, to prosper is criminalized. Why? Because Iran dares to stand tall. because Iran refuses to bow to the same empire that props up Israel, because Iran sees through the mask of diplomacy that hides a dagger beneath the table, and yet the world asks why there is tension. There is tension because one nation is given a license to kill and another is punished for breathing. This is not just dangerous, it is destabilizing. It fuels hatred, breeds extremism, and robs the world of peace. For as long as Israel is given the right to act outside the law, there will be those who rise to challenge it. And when those challengers are condemned as terrorists, while the state that provokes them is praised as democratic, we create a world where truth has no voice and justice has no home. Let us not forget the hypocrisy. The West that preaches human rights will look away as Palestinian children are bombed in their sleep. The same nations that demand democracy in Iran will support apartheid in Israel. Same voices that condemn resistance will call occupation a right. This is the theater of deception in which Israel plays the starring role, not because it is moral, but because it is useful. We are told Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, but what kind of democracy lives behind walls? What kind of democracy arrests children, demolishes homes, and shoots journalists? It is not democracy, it is domination, packaged with smiles and sold with slogans, and the world keeps buying it because the salesman wears a suit and speaks English. We must awaken to this truth. Israel's belief that it is special does not come from within. It comes from a system that has taught it to believe it is above consequence. A system that has made it believe that international law is for others, that morality is optional, that suffering is negotiable if it is not their own. And so I say to you, Israel, exceptionalism is not a fact, it is a fabrication sustained by billions, built on silence and defended with lies. Until we call it by its true name, until we challenge the hand that feeds it, there will be no justice. Not for Palestine, not for Iran, not for the Middle East, not for humanity, because a world where one nation is propped up to act as a god will soon become a world where no nation is free. My brothers and sisters, there is a trick that tyrants have always played, a game as old as empires. If you cannot justify your violence, then create a villain. If your house is built on injustice, then make the world fear the neighbor, and that is exactly what Israel has mastered in its portrayal of Iran. It is not just a conflict of nations, it is a carefully scripted theater where Israel plays the victim while scripting Iran as the eternal threat. But behind the stage lights, behind the headlines, and behind the diplomatic camouflage lies a deeper, darker truth. Demonizing Iran is not about survival. It is about sustaining power, global sympathy, and the unchecked right to oppress. You see, Israel needs enemies, not because it is surrounded, but because it must. Constantly remind the world why it deserves special treatment. The myth of permanent threat is the fuel that drives its military budget, that justifies its aggression, and that wins it billions in aid from the West. Without that fear, without that carefully curated image of Iran as a barbaric menace, the world might start asking questions. Questions about Gaza, questions about apartheid, questions about nuclear stockpiles, questions about war crimes, and Israel cannot afford those questions. So what does it do? It paints Iran as irrational, as a state of terror, as a wild beast frothing at the mouth, obsessed with Israel's destruction. It never tells you that Iran, unlike Israel, has never launched a preemptive war. It never tells you that Iran signed the nuclear deal and honored it, until it was sabotaged by the very forces now crying danger. It never tells you that Israel itself possesses an undeclared nuclear arsenal, immune to inspections, protected by Western silence. Instead, they point fingers, fabricate threats, and manipulate public opinion to create a villain that justifies their every violation. This narrative has consequences. It is not just lies in the air, it is bombs in the sky. It is sanctions that starve innocent Iranians. It is assassinations that kill scientists on their way to work. It is cyber attacks that paralyze medical facilities. It is economic strangulation that punishes an entire population not for what they've done, but for refusing to kneel. All while the world applauds Israel for its security, let us be clear, no nation is above criticism. Iran has its flaws like any state, but what we are witnessing is not critique, it is demonization. It is the systematic portrayal of Iran as unworthy of sovereignty, unworthy of nuclear energy, unworthy of defense, and it is this demonization that gives Israel its moral license to strike, to sabotage, to provoke, while calling itself the victim. Israel wants to be the only power in the region. It does not want balance, it wants dominance. It does not want peace, it wants obedience. And any country that resists that hegemony becomes a target. Palestine resists, Palestine is bombed. Lebanon resists, Lebanon is invaded. Syria resists, Syria is destabilized. Iran resists, Iran is demonized. This is the pattern, this is the policy, this is the truth they won't tell you on television. Western media is a willing partner in this illusion. They echo every Israeli accusation while questioning every Iranian denial. They mourn Israeli fear while ignoring Iranian funerals. They amplify Israeli propaganda while silencing voices that challenge it, and so the lie becomes truth. Truth becomes treason, and the world once again is taught to fear the wrong enemy. But I ask you, who is the true aggressor? Is it Iran, encircled by U.S. military bases, sanctioned, threatened, attacked? Or is it Israel, armed to the teeth, protected from all criticism, occupying foreign land, acting with impunity, who has planes in the skies of others, who has drones in foreign territories, who builds walls while preaching peace, who names its violence self-defense and labels resistance terrorism? This false image of Iran serves another purpose. It masks Israel's crime. Palestine, whenever Gaza burns, Israel changes the subject. Look at Iran, they say, forget the children buried in rubble. Forget the siege, forget the blockades, forget the hunger. And the world, conditioned by fear, obeys. They forget the occupation, they forget the pain, they look away, but we must not look away. We must expose this manipulation for what it is. A political tool of survival for a regime that cannot on the legs of truth, a distraction to keep the world from seeing the real reason for conflict, not Iranian missiles, but Israeli domination. Let us not be fooled by this grand illusion. Iran is not the threat. Truth is, justice is, resistance is, and that is what Israel fears most, not nuclear, but a world that finally sees through the lies.